going for various social networks. Let me get that out of the way there. Come back to this and get my notes for this week's episode set up. Okay, I think we're about ready to go. And we are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all sorts and flavors. Welcome to another Monday morning tech chat. I, of course, am Juan Carlos Bagnell, some gadget guy, and this is a podcast that I like to put together to talk about news stories from the last week, maybe over the weekend, stories that maybe fell through the cracks, deserve a little bit more discussion, and then also to get the community chatting a little bit more about what's going on in their tech lives. I'm already seeing some people pop into the live stream. Alex Morgan, this makes me enjoy Monday mornings. It sounds like someone's got a case of the Mondays. Aditya Anil, System 64, seeing some chatter already, folks. We've got a lot to chew through. And again, this is going to be one of those maybe I don't have the most faith in humanity podcasts. I'm going to try and keep it positive. Lover of tech, happy Prime Day. Happy Prime Day, everybody. Not that I don't host a show for Newegg or anything like that, but yeah, I'm sure there are some great deals on Amazon Prime going on right now. I might be buying a Kindle just to help with producing the Geek Book Club, because reading from phone screens is starting to mess me up, man. From Ronald Sims, the best part of a Monday. Ed Modlin, Wolf Gaming, some really cool folks in the live chat. We're going to have a lot to talk about. So, and Demir made the show. Hey, Demir Frank. How's it going, buddy boy? Again, my weekly shout out for Demir and Demir's channel. I really like the work that he does, so you should definitely check out his reviews too. A little bit of housekeeping. I'm having a proud of me moment that, I didn't even have my camera on this whole time. You were just looking at my website. This is failing at live streaming 101. I'm not taking this over again. We're going. This is a go time. If you're listening to the audio podcast, I use OBS to do screen sharing and stuff, and I just had my website up with all of my links and tabs open. This is the first bit of housekeeping I wanted to get to. Okay. So, this is a proud of me moment. This is a project I've been working on for a little while now. This is the manual camera settings guide. I've gotten a lot of questions. It just seems to be something in the air. People asking about their smartphone cameras, how they can get the most out of their nice phone cameras, or even maybe their not so nice phone cameras, even mid-ranger and entry-level phones. When you look at where we've been over the last couple of years, have pretty decent cameras. I've been trying to put together this project as a video primer that can run hand in hand, sort of an introduction to the book that I wrote on smartphone photography, and then also as a way to kind of tailor the discussion. There's a wealth. I got a really, not snarky, but I mean kind of a critical comment on this video already, saying, well, there's already a wealth of commentary about photography. There are already so many amazing educational resources. Why don't you just point people to that? Why are you making this own video? I've never been a huge fan of the I'm just asking why this even exists kind of comment, but it's a fair question in that there is a ton of amazing resources for people to improve their photography. So I wrote a book and I've produced this video. Why not just point people to other resources? And I feel there is something very important to the discussion of improving your phone photography, where we actually focus the discussion on that actual hardware, on the smartphone camera. I feel like if I send you off to a more classic photography resource, something that's more fit for a DSLR, immediately, you're going to notice some of the trade-offs and some of the problems when you can't do things like control your aperture. That's a big deal on a DSLR, and it's not something you can do on a phone camera. There are going to be significant differences in approaches to things like white balance, metering, the focus fall off, the aesthetic components of what makes for a nice DSLR shot versus a nice smartphone shot. Most of the core philosophy, how you acquire and control light, a lot of that stuff is going to stay the same. But I do feel that there is merit in staging this conversation specifically for phones. So that's my big deal here. And it's a 17-minute video. So again, just sort of a proud of me moment. Manual camera settings guide. It is now live on the YouTubes. It went up last week for Patreon subscribers. They got early access. But this is one of those videos that I don't expect to blow up in the short term. I just hope is something that people share and talk about and continues to build a little bit of an audience over a longer period of time. Especially, like I was saying, it just seems to be something in the air. People are curious. People, get a taste for creating something with the phone and then want to build out of just always having the auto awesome HDR mode, turning all of their photos into unicorn puke. So now there are resources, and there's a part of the conversation where you can build on top of that. If you have something specific that you want to achieve, or you're shooting in really tricky conditions, knowing your way around your camera is going to help significantly in capturing the moment when you need to. And having a little practice, practicing a little before you're in one of those situations makes a world of difference for that clutch moment when you're trying to land that shot. So, I'm stoked to have put it out there. I hope you folks will enjoy it, share it, talk about it, do all that fun stuff. It's these are the passion projects that I've been trying to get back to in moving to my own channel. Not just, continuing the same slate of phone reviews, but also getting a few more of these videos out there too, where I feel it's important to join the conversation about empowering creation. At no point in our history have we had better tools, better access, and better distribution for making our own stuff. So let's actually take advantage of that before, the death of net neutrality and corporatism ruins our ability to share this content. We'll be talking a little bit about that in this podcast today. From Renato Laporte, almost everyone has a smartphone. Teaching us how to use a smartphone camera makes it more accessible than giving a whole photography tutorial on a reflex. Well, yeah. I mean, again, ideally, we would all own like Hasselblad medium format cameras to have the absolute bestest in imaging and optics, but that's not the reality. The reality is the phone has completely replaced the point and shoot camera market, so we should tailor a part of the discussion to that. I think it's the best jumping off point, though. I've had numerous people talk to me about, especially from the V10 era, the LG V10 onwards, that getting their brain wrapped around the mechanics of shooting on a phone like that, which really stresses some amazing manual modes, was a launching point for them to then consider purchasing a DSLR or mirrorless camera. I mean, that goes hand in hand. Once you understand the philosophy of content creation, the philosophy of imaging, it's really easy to make that transition into something else that's a specialized tool for that kind of content creation. Again, you have microphones on your phone, but if you're wanting to record a podcast or you're wanting to work in commercial voiceover, that microphone is insufficient. You build into wanting another solution which is tailor fit for the type of content that you're wanting to produce. So, one other little bit of housekeeping. This one's a little bit more self-serving, and especially in addition to the ads that are run on my podcast and on my channel. But if you've been following my videos, the list of links to support my production has gotten longer and longer, and there's been more affiliate links and more things that I'm trying to point you guys to. And so I thought it would be helpful to collect all of my sort of mutually beneficial affiliate and sponsor stuff into one blog post, and then I can link to that. And if you are interested in supporting the production on this channel, then here's a handy list of resources of things that I think are really cool for people to check out. And so I have done just that. This is the Support Some Gadget Guy blog post, where you can scroll through and see the top ways that you can support production on this channel. And I've also got a tease for some stuff that's coming out soon, like the Megapixel mug, which I've just ordered proofs of. I did just order proofs of the Megapixel mug. Hopefully they'll be here. They'll probably be here around the end of the month, and I'll be able to see if that design is gonna look good on an actual physical product. And then from there, I might start selling mugs, which sounds terrible, but but is actually really exciting. So again, support Some Gadget Guy. There's going to be a link on all my future videos. It's linked on SomeGadgetGuy.com, and there's the full list, the Patreon, my photography book, I do have an Audible sponsorship. If you want to do some free audiobooks, you can do that with Audible. And then some new ones. OnePlus, I do have a voucher code at OnePlus. If you want to get $20 off accessories, you can hook that link up too when you're shopping a OnePlus. And then the Humble Bundle has been a really big deal for me getting back into gaming. Humble Bundle is an amazing service. You pay what you want for an individual game, or you sign up for their monthly subscription. It's $12 a month. You usually get over $100 worth of games, and then they also contribute to some fantastic charities. So it's a great subscription service, and it's not tied to a subscription. You just get Steam codes. So you keep the games when you end your Humble monthly subscription package. It's not like I get to play these games while I'm paying them. It's you own these titles, which is phenomenal. And it's been a great resource for also finding a bunch of really fun, quirky indie games. You usually get like one big one. Like 2 months ago, you got Destiny, Destiny 2. And then that was awesome. But then they had like 3 or 4 other little indie games that kind of went along in the same theme. So it's some fun stuff. I think next month is going to be Conan, is the main title, but then a bunch of other fantasy-themed games are coming out too. So there's a link there. You click on that link, and it helps contribute to production on this channel. You can buy a OnePlus and get $20 for an accessory. That helps contribute to this channel. You can get free audiobooks from Audible. That helps contribute to this channel. I could go on, but that's why I created the link, so I wouldn't have to go on and on. So let's get into some news. I'm seeing Chris. I'm seeing Aditya Anil. I'm seeing Ed Modlin. People asking about multiple lens cameras. Sherrill asking about the P20. Oh, Aditya asking Sherrill about the P20 Pro. I am still planning on going hands-on with the P20 Pro, but I got kind of caught up in BlackBerry coverage, and I wanted to get some other things out the door, and then some sponsored and branded videos I needed to produce, and I have this hosting gig at Newegg, so I will get back to the P20 Pro. It's just taking me a little longer than I thought it might. So be on the lookout for future P20 Pro coverage, probably just in time for us to start talking about rumors about the Mate 10. Anyway, I've got a couple quick little stories here that I want to jump into. Where's my... I want to put that one up next. Good. Okay, so a lot of political intrigue, a lot of back and forth, a lot of will they, won't they, and we're starting to see the ramifications of political discussion surrounding the company ZTE. This is directly from Reuters. ZTE stock surges as U.S. supplier ban lifted, though outlook remains uncertain. From the top paragraph of the story, investors on Monday cheered the lifting of a U.S. supplier ban on China's ZTE Corp, pushing its shares up 17%, though analysts cautioned the telecommunications equipment maker still faced many challenges as it works to revive its business. This ban effectively wiped out, I think it's somewhere here in this article, around $11 billion worth of value. Uncertainty over the ban battered ZTE shares, wiping nearly $11 billion from the company's market valuation. And a part of, again, what they're talking about, a part of the major problem here, what ZTE is facing, is also rebuilding their business while diversifying away from utilizing as many United States components and software. So, again, a lot of this is more ZTE makes most of their money on telecommunications infrastructure. So that means walking away from companies like Qualcomm, and then finding other solutions for making up the difference on that infrastructure equipment. Of course, I'm talking about ZTE because I loved the Axon 7, and I'll be curious to see if this gets them on track to releasing another consumer-facing phone. They've been one of those suppliers that does fairly well at the entry and mid-range, especially supplying, sort of custom-built entry-level phones, free on-contract kinds of solutions for MVNO networks. So I'll be curious to see what practical effect this has on their business strategy, because I think another thing that has changed is part of their penalty for getting this ban lifted was also eliminating most of their executive team. So what we'll have to see over the next years is does this actually change business at the ground floor at ZTE, or is this company so large with so many moving parts and with so much influence from shareholders that we'll see the same kind of business from them just different faces when we get a press conference or an earnings report. That's kind of the trick. Is I think so many of these megacorps, ZTE is a huge organization, kind of run on an autopilot guided by whatever's going to be most profitable over the next fiscal quarter. And I don't know that changing a few faces at the top of that structure really have a significant impact on the actual practices as they're executed. From Sherrill, the light phone will be vaporware until we see it in Juan's hands. Maybe. I don't know, man. I don't get phones like I used to. Again, even Samsung isn't replying to my emails anymore, so I might actually have to buy a Note if I'm going to review it. I'm still super cranky that we haven't had any news or any possibility that we might see a Galaxy S9 active. Because I held out. I was like, I am not reviewing Samsung until I know whether or not we're going to get an active. The actives are the best. Everything that we say we want, we gadget nerds want in a phone, that's it. It's the active. But we haven't gotten any confirmation. I'm going to take a drink of coffee. From Farich Anton Susilo, why at first many reviewers just said good, even excellent to the BB Key 2, then right now like they want to throw it. So I just saw Unbox Therapy's non-review of the BlackBerry Key 2. I mean, I actually just watched it. It's a 4-minute video where he talks about everything that the phone isn't and doesn't really talk about anything that the phone is other than the keyboard. And he gets a few things wrong on the keyboard, especially as it pertains to things like emojis. And I can't say I'm particularly surprised. You can say you're using the phone for 2 weeks, but then not really use the phone. So it doesn't sound like he set up customizations beyond just the bindable key on the side. Sounds like he tried to use it as a mostly screen, again, typing on the keyboard, but then trying to do everything else from the screen. He doesn't talk about the capacitive sensors, the fingerprint sensor, network performance, battery life, and then only points to the fact that it doesn't have the chipset that he thinks it should have. He says, oh, you can get a Qualcomm 845 for cheaper. Again, that completely misses and belies the point, and he reduces the security aspects of the BlackBerry Key 2 to one clip of showing the DTEC app, without mentioning anything else that goes into BlackBerry security. Again, making it probably the most secure Android platform if you care about protecting your data. Something that if you're a businessman, if you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, something that would be of significant benefit to you in this current age of cracking open phones. Again, the BlackBerry is a productivity device with very specific focuses. And so if you are an Android enthusiast, your usage probably doesn't jive with what the BlackBerry is trying to accomplish. And I think that's fair. I think it's fair to say, there are a lot of people who shouldn't buy this phone, but that's not reviewing what the phone is. That's reviewing what the phone isn't. So I can't really speak. There are so many people that have changing their mind. I kind of feel like some of those folks are changing their minds in a climate where it's fashionable to punch down on certain companies. That's about the best hypothesis I can come up with. So whether or not, sorry, I'm seeing some of the some of the other announcements, some of the other comments in here. Renato Laporte, oh my God, 4 minutes of Unbox Therapy. It's a torture. I mean, again, I can't fault Lou. He's got his shtick. I mean, it's what you signed up for when you watch one of Lou's videos. That's what I'm saying. I need the glasses at the top of that shelf that don't actually have lenses in them, so I can look like I'm a smart internet nerd. But that's the shtick. Again, I kind of feel like Unbox Therapy in a roundabout way. He's built up a certain audience that follow him for that entertainment value, and he's gonna play the SEO game too. And if you make a video, a review of the BlackBerry Key 2, and you just say BlackBerry Key 2 review, it's not going to do well. If you put in this, the search, don't buy BlackBerry, then you're going to get a bunch of, Android and smartphone enthusiasts that are ready and frothing at the mouth to have their preconceived notions about the phone confirmed, and you're going to score way better. But it kind of, again, comes to some of the other points too, like when I was mentioning MKBHD on a previous podcast. If we look at his video production behavior and his video production habits, it's easier to support production on phones that you already know are going to be popular, and you don't want to utilize resources to make a video on a phone that you know won't perform as well in search, so that instantly tailors the focus that you have for producing content. It's why you get a OnePlus 6 review, because OnePlus 6 fans are going to support that video, and you only get an LG G7 first impressions. You don't get a review on that phone. That phone doesn't make it into a top 5 camera shootout, even though it's got some serious hardware to offer in a competition in camera tech. But you don't see that on his channel. Again, that's an SEO game. I don't think it's intentional. I don't think he's sitting there planning, how can I support OnePlus 6 and screw LG? It's what's going to get me the best bang for my traffic, for my buck, for the time it takes me to produce a video. You know, I'm going to focus on this because the audience seems to like that, and then that pushes other videos out to the periphery. And that's what we're dealing with in this current age of internet content production. Ruari Lewis from Unbox Therapy spends half a video screaming at the camera. Again, that's his, you know, he's mad as heck and he's not going to take it anymore. It's performance art. It's theater. It's what we all do. I mean, even I'm putting on some aspect of a SomeGadgetGuy character that you won't have this cranky guy if we were just going out to lunch and drinking beers and stuff. I'd like to think that I'm a little bit closer to me, but again, I also have a camera pointing in my face, and I'm going to talk to this camera for 2 hours while also trying to read comments off the side of my screen. From Kyle Netherward, he's an unboxer, not a reviewer. I disagree, because he is making a claim. He's making a claim that his opinion can help influence purchasing behavior. So that, to me, is a reviewer. He can sit back and say, I'm an unboxer all he wants. Oh, look at all these boxes that I'm unboxing. But then he puts out videos like, don't buy this phone. So he's making, and I needed to give the phone the benefit of the doubt. I need to use it for 2 whole weeks. Everybody was saying, why are you using this phone for 2 whole weeks, Lou? And I was like, because I need to know what I'm talking about when I tell you not to buy this phone. That's a reviewer. That there's literally nothing about that exchange from his BlackBerry Key 2 review where he's not making the claim that he has an informed opinion as some kind of tech enthusiast, nay, expert in technology, that he can share with people who weren't going to buy or weren't interested in shopping the BlackBerry anyway. Travis Walker, off topic. Have you revived your Pebble with Rebel? I haven't yet. I know I've been saying I will. I really want to get my Pebble time up and running again. So I'm hopefully, I don't even think I'll have time to do it this week, but I'm hoping I can set it up. I've got some travel planned at the end of the month, and that sounds like a nice tech vacation for me. Whereas instead of packing a whole bunch of stuff into a trip that I'm going to try and review, I might just spend it catching up on a few geeky, nerdy things that I haven't had the time to do on my own. Lots of other comments, people complaining about LG. From Fat Produce, listen to some of Android Central podcast, and LG has fallen a lot in Android Central's eyes the past year or two. Fat Produce, your impression makes me think of Ali G doing phone reviews. Again, we all have our shtick, man. My shtick is being cranky and yelling at kids to get off my lawn. So that's kind of the game. And then, from LGH Dotma, Juan, will you be at IFA? I'm actually not going to be able to make it to IFA this year. I wasn't paying attention to my calendar, and I booked some jobs early this year that unfortunately will significantly help pay rent. So I'm going to be staying in town. And also, I don't have an outlet backing me for IFA this year, where, like Pocket now, I was sort of on the monthly payroll. I was on the monthly stipend. It's a lot easier to make an international trip when you've got income coming specifically from that kind of production. I don't think there would be enough at IFA for me to cover, especially in the current climate of YouTube monetization, that could anywhere near help pay for that trip, which is unfortunate because the cool thing about IFA isn't that you get so much great content. It's that you get to reinforce your relationships. It's one of those great, like CES. It's Mobile World Congress. Like, you get such amazing coverage. It kind of is worth it just to go for the coverage. IFA and CES, I get to shake hands with PR contacts that I've genuinely become friends with. I get to reinforce those relationships. That's worth it, but not when it's, it's not only that would be spending a whole bunch of money to go out to IFA. That's not the problem. It's spending a whole bunch of money to go out to IFA and then having to turn down other jobs which are going to pay really well. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to pass. I've got some other comments here. I'm going to move on to the next story because this one's a little bit more of a wonky insider tech discussion. I'm really curious to see if this story pans out. So the link that's already been shared on Reddit has been broken thanks to Reddit traffic. So I'm going to a post which is digging into another analyst's post on Reddit. This is from R Hardware. Original article by Robert May briefly mentioned Samsung in a semiwiki.com article. This is quoted from the Reddit article, which is quoted from SemiWiki. We attended Semicon West Monday and Tuesday, the annual show for the semi-equipment industry. It's very clear from discussions with all our sources in the industry that confirm that Samsung has put the brakes on spending on memory. And that message was reinforced by declines in their expected profitability due to weaker memory pricing. We maintain that a near-term shipment drop of 25% for LAM and 10 to 15% for AMAT is probable. As we've said before, it is not possible for the rate of memory spending to continue at such high levels, although demand has remained good. Pricing of both NAND and DRAM has softened, even though still quite profitable for memory makers. Samsung is taking prudent steps to slow spending. I don't know where you live, but have you seen significant drops in RAM pricing? Because I don't know that I've seen any softening of that market. I will say that solid-state drives and NVMe drives have been falling pretty aggressively. But I don't know, because I'm trying to price out a rebuild. My current system is DDR4, but I kind of have gut rot RAM. I want to get something I can overclock a little bit, and the current RAM I have can't. And I want to pair this up with a second generation Threadripper. That's the build that I'm looking towards. Renato Laporte, the only drop in RAM I've seen was the last time Linus dropped a stick. Again, we all have our own shtick. I wish my shtick was I can drop really expensive computer components and people will still keep sending me stuff, but I don't get to play that game. Sorry. So this is what's troubling. I want to say it was a couple months ago, I detailed a story on this podcast talking about yet another RAM price fixing scandal, which involved Samsung and Hynix. I think that's how you pronounce the company name. That's very concerning when three companies can basically dominate the entire infrastructure of an industry. That affects everything, because if your RAM pricing affects every single other system that's built post individual component prices. That's an incredible amount of influence over the market, and this isn't the first time that they've been investigated for collusion, for working together on these products and to make sure that they can keep profitability as high as possible. There are estimates that Samsung's current memory portfolio, not storage, not solid state storage, flash memory, but memory or RAM, portfolio is profitable to the tune of over 60%. So they're already making a ton of money on a market which hasn't seen significant price fluctuations. If anything, I've only seen prices climb and then level off and then dip to where they used to be. That to me sounds like a market that has been influenced by specific manufacturing behavior, targeted to make sure that prices don't fluctuate, that profitability remains high, and that it keeps these components just slightly out of a competitive market. From Fat Produce, maybe there are drops in RAM pricing when you are ordering RAM in the thousands of sticks. I don't know. Again, I think that's, again, a corporate business tier decision where a company like Apple can negotiate pricing and cut into some of that profit margin from Samsung. But I don't even think individual component manufacturers, like I don't even think Dell would get that kind of preferential treatment. I think it's only at the tier of a Samsung or Apple that would get to have that kind of negotiating leverage. Sherrill, RAM prices still up in the air, as in up in the clouds. I wish they would fly down to manageable levels so I can get cheaper 16 gigabyte kits. From Renato, I'd love to see Chinese manufacturers like HiSilicon going on developing storage chips, volatile and non-volatile. Yeah. Yeah, that would be nice. Again, anytime we have a market where there's competition, but not really. Like there are three major players in RAM manufacturing, just as there are 4 major cell phone carriers, or in your local market, there are probably 2 whole internet service providers, one with DSL and one with cable. That's all competition, but you don't actually get a choice. Like you can't really exercise or vote with your wallet. So that's a problem. This is a lot of speculative market analysis. So now what we need to do is see over the next 6 months, how does this play out in the market? If Samsung takes up to a 25% drop in manufacturing, that should be enough to help RAM prices rise over the next 6 months. So I want to take a look at what RAM pricing is today, especially backed by Samsung components, but overall, this should affect pricing across the board. So even a competitor's product will benefit from Samsung backing off RAM production, and that's where we need to take a closer look at this market behavior. Unfortunately, it's going to be summed up in quarterly reports, whereas we need to look at 6 months to a year out. How did this affect the market, and what will this mean for next generation products? Again, like eventually we're going to start talking about like DDR5. What is this going to do? Will we actually see price cuts on this stuff? Especially in that window, that interim. There was a time where DDR3 was just as expensive as DDR4. Will that parity be reached with a next generation memory solution? Or will we see market manipulation to encourage a certain profitability of those components as we make that transition? All right, moving right along. So I do have some stories here. I don't want to, or do I want to go to the, here, I'm going to say let's jump to Apple first. Then we'll swing back to Apple when we talk about content production and distribution. So 2 quick stories. I've got this up here. Apple has a surprising amount of unsold iPhone X inventory. This is from Cult of Mac. Apple is sitting on a massive stockpile of unsold iPhone X devices, a new report claims. The backlog reportedly equals almost 3 times the number of the high-end handsets already shipped. Now, these aren't necessarily finished iPhones, the article goes on to comment. And that's actually, I think, a very smart play by Apple. I would not take this headline is sort of sensationalized. Again, coming from Cult of Mac, I think they're going for some clicks. This isn't bad news for Apple. This is actually, I think, a good strategy. We're pretty confident that future iPhones are going to follow more in the design language, aesthetic, and feature set of the iPhone X than in previous phones like the iPhone 8. It's time to get away from the iPhone 6 style of iPhone. So if we're going to continue incorporating parts from an iPhone X aesthetic, it would make sense to stockpile those parts, which can then be serviced in an iPhone 11 or an iPhone 9 or an iPhone X2 or whatever they decide to call it. From DGO, new iPhone iX coming 2018. The iPhone 9, but the iX. That's actually a pretty smart branding. I would be on board that. That's pretty clean. But you get ahead of the curve. There were a lot of problems with component manufacturing and Apple getting preferred deals on manufacturing individual parts for the iPhone 10, and it took a little while to get that beast up into general consumer brick and mortar stores just for how different it was from previous iPhones. So this to me is actually positive news for Apple fans. If you're an iPhone fan, if you've been waiting for an iPhone 10 style device, but under $1,000, this is good news for you, because that means that hopefully when these new iPhones are announced and when they're launched, we'll have a good stockpile of devices ready to be shipped. From Ronald Sims, Apple is rolling in dough. The iPhone 10 design will live forever. I mean, yeah, I don't think anyone was too surprised, by the last year's sales numbers. The iPhone 8 kind of cut into what might have been a more substantial shift for Apple in terms of iPhone design. It also definitely sent a signal as to how far you can push pricing and still keep general consumers on board, that the iPhone 8s outsold the iPhone 10. If the iPhone 10 had outsold the combined iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, we wouldn't even be pretending that this was a branding exercise or just a specialty one-off phone to celebrate the 10th anniversary. It would have just continued on, iPhone 10 sold well, bam, iPhone 10 forever, we're just going to do that. Now we're going to start playing games with, some have OLED, some have LCDs, maybe a cheaper phone might still have Touch ID instead of Face ID. We don't know yet. But it was pretty clear that Apple needed to make a transition anyway. So they did it with a one-off product, called that an anniversary edition, and then it was just what label do we slap on the side of the box? And that's really all this is now, is just it's called something different, and that's going to get nerds' undies in a twist, but we're pretty clear that's where we're going. From Cheryl, I wonder if OLED can be made transparent enough to have the Face ID sensors to be placed under the screen to have it notchless. I don't believe they can be yet. And the problem isn't necessarily whether or not the OLED can be made transparent enough. It's you would still have a discontinuity in the display when using those pixels, that without some kind of backing, they would look different than the surrounding area of the phone screen. So one of the reasons why your OLED looks so nice and has such great contrast is because your phone isn't transparent, right? This is why the whole sci-fi dream of having that transparent phone is such a dumb idea as a practical real-world device. Is because now you not only have to worry about light that's hitting the screen, but you also have to worry about ambient light coming from behind the screen. If what's backing up that is a camera, it's going to look different than the rest of the phone, which just has sort of a neutral black covered background. So unfortunately, I don't think that that's going to be our great savior just yet. Because when we do sort of figure out a solution for that, whatever that might look like, I can't wait for having a camera smack dab in the middle of the screen. So I can make eye contact with whoever I'm video calling, or when you're taking a selfie, you can make eye contact with yourself to make that selfie even better. And how many times you've gone to take a photo with a friend and one of you is looking at the camera and the other person's looking at the display and it looks kind of wonky, but we can solve that. It just means we have to figure out a component, manufacturing process. Maybe it's quantum dot. I don't know. But we're not quite there yet, or at least I don't believe we're quite there yet. Or we're not quite there yet at a price that consumers can stomach. Let's see. For surreal transparent aluminum. I think I read a story on that. Someone posted something on Reddit that that there is some kind of transparent aluminum product that a company is making. I'll have to look that up. I should have included that in my rundown. I do have one other Apple story here, and this one's a little disappointing. Not quite as positive as the clickbaity title that Apple is sitting on a ton of iPhone 10 parts. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. This one, though, is for MacBook fans. This is from Mac Rumors. Apple says third-generation keyboards exclusive to the 2018 Mac Pro. So, This is from the article. Last month, Apple initiated a keyboard service program for MacBook and MacBook Pro after determining that, quote, a small percentage, unquote, of the keyboards in 2015 to 2017 MacBook and 2016 to 2017 MacBook Pro models may experience keys that feel sticky, repeat, or do not respond in a consistent manner. Apple did not identify a cause for the issue, which they call behaviors, but they're believed to be caused by dust and other particulates becoming stuck in the butterfly switch mechanism under the keycaps. So, oh, wait, no, I should show you this photo. This is also from Mac Rumors. They have a photo up on this too. Let me go back into screen share. What we're seeing on the 2018 MacBook Pro is they've included this sort of silicone membrane under the keycap on top of the mechanism for the switch, which should hopefully prevent gunk from getting under your keys, so it will prolong the life of that keyboard. That means to me that the terrible key feel, the terrible key travel on the MacBook isn't going anywhere, and that they're just going to have a little extra padding on a keyboard that already doesn't feel great, but should hopefully prolong the life of that keyboard. And again, we can point to a consistent pattern of Apple behavior where they don't really address a manufacturing flaw until they encounter a class action lawsuit. Like, this is something that they could have corrected back, in 2012, 2013, when these products started shifting up in how in the technology that they used for the keyboard. The 2011 MacBook still seems like the 2011 MacBook Pro still seems like it's probably one of the best if you like, an all-around well-built MacBook. From Renato Laporte. They didn't identify the cause, but they've installed some condom on the new keyboards to keep stuff out. Ha Actually, again, the comment was funny when you end the comment with "aha." that's gonna get me. It's gonna get me to read your comment live on the podcast. So what's frustrating here is you've got a 2015 to 2017 MacBook. Your keyboard's having problems. You want it to be fixed and replaced with something that functions well, or perhaps even functions better than the original. That's not Apple. They're not going to. It's looking like they're not going to replace MacBook keyboards with this new protected design. That design is going to stick with the 2018 MacBook. So I totally appreciate and I totally understand why you draw that line. But again, if we're talking about a company which bills itself on support, bills itself on that customer experience of being the world-class, high-end consumer electronics manufacturer that they are, you would expect them to go above and beyond. But that's not what we see here. Instead, what we see is Apple puts out products. If there is an issue with those products, they try and keep those issues as quiet as possible until several years outside the life of that product, until there's sort of a weight of pressure either from the community or from lawsuits to encourage some kind of repair program where most people might have already, or many people have likely already migrated to another product because their last product had those problems. And then when you do get that replacement or when you do get that fix, it's not really a fix so much as it is just sort of a temporary patch. We saw that with the flexion damage on iPhones. Some of the new repairs for that, just are just these tiny little bits of solder don't really address the problem, but just kind of stick a Band-Aid on it and maybe your phone's still usable for a little bit longer. Or previous MacBooks that had circuit board problems, they would just put padding on like part of the frame of the chassis. Again, they didn't actually fix the problem. They just wedged some gum in there, and that at least keeps the component stuck to the logic board. So you're going to be fine there too. This 2018 MacBook keyboard doesn't seem to be that improved. That to me is if you were concerned about that kind of stuff, if you liked the clickier keyboard on previous MacBooks, this isn't going to get you there, and that's kind of a bummer because this is, again, Apple doesn't really seem to be listening to some of the consumers about the things that concerned them about their products, and instead they're just kind of putting a little gum on the problem, and hopefully that'll fix it. What is it with Apple and padding and condoms from Kyle Netherwood? Because it's money. Again, it's about money. It's you to retool the manufacturing is going to cost a lot of money. So you just deal with the repairs and the replacements because there's a certain threshold. There's a certain threshold where if you don't hit that threshold, it's way more profitable to just keep the problem in place and then kind of just deal with the repair fallout. And that's what we've seen, especially on the iPhones. From the iPhone 6 to the iPhone 8, that structure, that design has the same issues with very specific kinds of flexion damage. Not necessarily bend gate, not where the phone will actually fold if you bend it too hard. But circuit board components over the life of that product are very easily damaged when the phone is flexed. That fault in design is still maintained today in the iPhone 8. So it's cheaper for Apple to keep making the phone the same way and deal with the occasional warranty issue than it is to retool and remanufacture the iPhone. And hopefully that's a problem that's fixed in the new iPhone 10 style design. We'll have to see. We'll have to see over the life of the iPhone 10, does it succumb to the same types of flex damage that the iPhone 6 experienced? And I don't know. I mean, like, to me, that's kind of a big experiment to ask when you're charging such a premium for those products. That, to me, is not you're getting the best product. It's you're kind of buying into the brand of Apple and that you get good support because you have brick and mortar stores that you can walk into and complain about stuff. But that's the game, and that's how you make the most profitable company of all time. This is not a meritocracy. This is not, altruism. These companies are not our friends. They're giant machines designed to accrue as much wealth for their shareholders as possible. And this is true of every company. This isn't unique to Apple. It's just Apple makes a claim for how they conduct business, and they make a claim for how they relate with customers. So this is how the claim should be examined. They should be judged by the standard of their claims. So, from Jay Perez, what's up with the iPhone SE successor still canceled? ? I think we talked about this a little on last week's podcast, maybe the week before. My hypothesis is a 3-device strategy this year, where it's not a big little mainstream iPhone and a premium iPhone, but it's a small, medium, large iPhone. And so I think what would have been an iPhone SE will be the smaller form factor iPhone 11. Then there will be a mainstream medium-sized iPhone and then a premium plus version iPhone. Excuse me. And I think that's the strategy we're going to see. So it's going to be a smaller iPhone, probably running last year's chipset instead of this year's. I don't know. That's my guess. Single camera, smaller battery, smaller screen, etc. The more mainstream model, a little bit bigger, more iPhone 10 sized. And then if you want the dual cameras and the bigger battery, the higher resolution display, that's where you're going to go up to the plus size. And that way you can probably have like $100 price difference between those three. The larger one taking us up maybe to $900. Maybe that one does hit $1,000. The more mainstream models closer to $800, and the smaller form factor, what would have been an iPhone SE, can come in at like $600. Maybe it's a $200 price swing between each tier. I don't know. That's my guess. So we'll see at the end of the year how good I am at predicting this stuff, because if I were really very good at predicting this stuff, I'd probably be a lot richer than I currently am. So I want to get into some politics because I'm really cranky about some politics. From Jay Perez, is iOS 12 said to improve battery life? If so, that makes even the current iPhone SE pretty compelling for those who love that design. I don't know. We'll have to see. I haven't been particularly there have been some improvements to UI and fluidity of navigation in iOS 11.4. But again, I don't spend a ton of time working the iOS angle. I kind of just dabble. I'm not really as well versed on the ins and outs of Apple, and so it always just kind of feels fresh to me because I'm usually only using that phone in a burst shortly after an update, and then I go back to the phones that I normally use to get my work done anyway. FCC Hey, so this was a very frustrating story to follow. I was going to talk about it a little last week, but I didn't really fully have a good handle on what was going on with the story. I wanted to read up on it a little bit more before I started shooting my mouth off. There was a plan put forth by Ajit Pai to adjust the language of the FCC's charter, of the FCC's mission, and how it deals with complaints. There are two systems at the FCC, an informal complaint and a formal complaint. Anyone can make an informal complaint, and it used to be under the FCC's purview or edict that they would still investigate that complaint from anyone. But there was a corporate tier of complaining, which came with a $200 charge, sort of a payment to the FCC to investigate at a higher tier or a more aggressive tact. Now, according to Ajit Pai, what the FCC's operating policy has been for the last several years is to take the informal complaint, not really investigate it, and then pass that complaint on to the industry, to the company, to the ISP that generated that complaint. So if you have a complaint with Comcast, they kind of look at it. They don't do anything to investigate it, and then they pass it on to Comcast and say, hey, we got this complaint. So according to Ajit Pai, they were going to actually build that behavior into the language of the operating practices of the FCC. Again, sort of pointing to a pay-to-play structure where if you really want your complaint to be investigated, then you need to pony up for the formal complaining process, which I believe is now $225. It's over $200. So, that was frustrating. I was trying to untangle what it is that they were making, the argument that they were making. And then a couple days ago, the story comes out, the FCC is going to retract that plan to cut the language about informal complaints. So that sounded like a victory. There's a lot happening at the FCC, and I still wouldn't have expected the FCC to follow up on informal complaints, but it should be a part of a regulatory body that they follow up on complaints and actually investigate, regardless of whether or not they were paid to do so, since that regulatory agency is funded on taxpayer dollars. They should investigate everything. And then I guess we'll have a tier, because of government, we'll have a tier where you can pay more if you really want a more aggressive form of investigation. Just because the FCC isn't doing it now doesn't mean that the language of the FCC should preclude them from doing it in the future. So that sounded like a victory until a couple days ago, where this language apparently was just put into effect anyway. So Ajit Pai, into the deliberation process of this potential change, said he was going to back off of removing this language, and then went ahead and removed it anyway. So it looks like the future mission of the FCC, as it's documented by their own standards, will cut this language about the informal process. The informal process will now be will actually be codified as, we will take your complaint and send it to the manufacturer that you have, or the company that you have a complaint with. And if you want us to investigate, it is now written into our code that you have to pay us if you want an actual regulatory agency to examine that complaint. And with this current flavor of the FCC, it would be you paying $200 to have them go, yeah, we didn't see a problem. Because, Verizon told us there wasn't a problem. So we did our due diligence and we investigated, and thanks for the $200. And that's exactly the process that we're looking at today. This was an infuriating story to dig up. So there's the Reddit posts. FCC retracts a plan to discourage consumer complaints. So, yeah, Wired even published that as the headline. FCC retracts a plan to discourage consumer complaints. And then The Hill, the next day, FCC passes controversial rule changing how it handles consumer complaints. This thing happened in a way that is completely impossible to follow unless you're a tech politics wonk. unless you are digging into the language of these PDFs. This is from The Hill. Rosenworcel said in a statement Thursday that her office was not given the draft order on which the commission was voting until around 11:30 a.m., an hour after the meeting began. So an hour into the meeting where they were talking about these proposed changes is when they got the proposed changes on the thing that they were voting for or against in that meeting. And this is Banana Republic style politics. This is lying to news outlets. Oh, you know what? I'm going to back off that plan. You know, we don't have to change that language. Change that language anyway. They're not paying attention. Go do it. I think Trump's going to say something about CNN. Run, 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 run. This is clown shoes. This is an absolute poop show of epic proportions, and it's going to get worse as I go through this podcast, because I've got another story about California, which, you know, those of you who don't love the liberals in California are probably going to like this story too. So again, further things that we need to keep an eye on with the FCC, and if we can trade out this administration over the next presidential election, if we can win some seats in the House and the Senate for liberals, we still have significant problems with influence and money in politics. And what we got to under the Obama administration was a fight years in the making, a decade in the making, and it was all undone in a year. And now it's going to probably take us yet another 10, 20 years to unravel all of the damage that's been done in this 1 year, if you care about things like having a free and open marketplace, a free exchange of ideas, of not having throttled internet, of having actual competition in the services sector. All these things that conservatives say they're for. If you're a conservative, if you're a libertarian, this is the sort of light touch regulation that you should be for. And you should be for getting rid of state initiatives to bar competition for things like ISPs. Because then when we have competition from ISPs, we don't need things like net neutrality. But if we don't have competition at the ISP level, you have zero protection now. You have no protection now. And we're going to be getting into even more of that here in just a bit. Let me save this story over here. Maybe I'll tag that at the end because it's just a happy little story. So there is some good news. India voted for net neutrality. And there are a couple little points about this story that I think are especially positive. Sharil, every time one says FCC, Eminem pops into my head and an earworm song plays. FCC. Okay, so this is from the Times of India. Internet to remain free and fair in India. Government approves net neutrality. The thing that makes me really excited about their implementation is this paragraph right here from the story. As per... Oh, whoops, I don't need to select the whole story. My mouse is a little too sensitive. There we go. As per the net neutrality rules in India, mobile operators, internet providers, and social media and internet companies cannot engage in or seek preferential treatment, as there will now be prohibition on any kind of interference in the treatment of content, including practices like blocking, degrading, slowing down, or granting differential speeds or treatment to any content. Why this is so significant is it's not just traditional cable DSL ISPs. They have included mobile operators and the content companies that exist on the internet into these restrictions as well. So that means an internet service cannot unduly influence a service provider. So a Twitter can't dump a ton of money into an ISP's coffers to influence behavior. Likewise, mobile data is treated the same as landline data. Here in the United States, the original OIO that Verizon sued the FCC over while Wheeler was the chairman of the FCC did not include mobile data. For some reason, we still act like that's different. That the cable that runs into your home is somehow different than the wireless signals that get sent to your phone. We are truly living in one of the darkest timelines. People are dumb. So not only was that not enough, but Verizon still sued the government over that, and that's why we ended up with the stricter, but still woefully inadequate regulatory practices that the FCC adopted under the Obama administration. So if you want protected status, if you want regulation that actually helps consumers, India might be a place for you to check out. Multiple places throughout the EU have started really getting after efforts to manipulate data, especially in a climate where we're already seeing social media weaponized against communities. If you still don't believe that there was any influence in our most recent elections, then you probably have some serious issues, and I hope you'll seek some treatment or some therapy for that. That's a major aspect at play. This is what the thing that I don't think. When you're super partisan, like let's say you're crazy wonky liberal or you're a crazy reactionary conservative. When your side is in power, you do everything you can to increase the power of your side. And then power changes from your side to the other side. And your political enemies now have access to all of the same tools that you gave to your side. That has become incredibly lopsided thanks to corporate influences in our country, in the United States. So we're going to have to spend generations of populations trying to rein back in the ridiculous aspects of power being shifted around in this country. And I worry that we're probably not up to the task. I don't think we're politically literate enough. I don't think we're empowered to make our voices heard enough. I don't think we're empowered to vote enough. And I feel like increasingly technology will be used against us. But that's me being cranky. From Sharil, the Indian net neutrality law is awesome. Here's hoping it can be a precedent to countries around the world. Again, sort of reinforced by a number of EU nations. Renato Laporte, take that, Facebook. Facebook wanted to provide some free access to its sites and partners. Again, that's a big deal, is whether or not one company can unduly influence a market by giving things away for free. Someone asking about Microsoft and an Android smartphone. We'll get to some of the other open questions here in a bit. And moving right along. Okay, so the reason why I wanted to hit that India story first is because we have another frustrating back and forth. Headlines don't do justice to the reality of the situation here in California. So in California, we had SB 822, and SB 822 was going to be the gold standard of net neutrality. New York was copying our 822 for their own legislative agenda to enforce an even stricter degree of net neutrality than what the FCC was going to regulate under the OIO. That's the Title II regulation that was enacted during the Obama administration. 822 was gutted, and most of what made the plan good was cut out of the plan after lobbying efforts from AT&T got their hands on a handful of assemblymen in California. So now there's another story coming out. California's net neutrality bill is strong again because you spoke out. This is courtesy of the EFF. So, I need to actually pull up the story. I only have the Reddit post up because there are some really important points in the Reddit note. So this is the EFF from the opening paragraphs. After a hearing that stripped California's gold standard net neutrality bill of much of its protections, California legislators have negotiated new amendments that restore the vast majority of those protections to the bill. Not all of the protections, the vast majority. The big ISPs and their money did not defeat the voices of the many people who want and need a free and open internet. On June 20th, the Communications and Conveyance Committee of the California Assembly, after having rejected proposed amendments to move Senator Scott Wiener's SB 822 and Senator Kevin De Leon's SB 460 forward as a package, also voted to gut 822's strong net neutrality protections. It opens up a whole bunch of loopholes. And one of the members most responsible for this, a huge benefiter of AT&T lobbying efforts, was Assemblymember Miguel Santiago, the chair of the Assembly Committee on Communications and Conveyance, helped to cut into a lot of this. So walking that back, they are reenacting the ban on blocking, throttling, and paid prioritizations. There's the EFF, I think, might have this wrong, though, that there will be a ban on certain kinds of zero rating. So that's where an ISP can lead you to using their services over a competitor's services. And there will be a ban on access fees, which means ISPs will not be able to get around these protections by charging fees at the places where data enters their network. Again, that's a lot of the interconnection issues that Netflix faced during like the Bush administration, where Netflix was being forced to pay essentially an extortion fee to utilize interconnection networks, and then they were still getting throttled in the last mile to consumers. So it didn't matter. They were paying all this extra money, and then the consumer was still getting screwed out of having a Netflix that wouldn't stream properly. So I'm still voting, encouraging people to vote against Santiago. He's not my district, so I can't vote against him directly, but I will be continuing. There's another Democrat that's running against him who's younger, savvier, and is more who's a lot friendlier to the tech community. So here's the problem. The zero rating thing may or may not actually be included in this language. And 822 still looks like it has that gaping hole where internet service providers can unduly influence the quality of traffic and the pricing of traffic under data caps, because most of us still have some kind of throttling cap, even if we have unlimited data, for competing services. And so some services, it looks like some services still might be able to find an end run around all of this where they can pay more to make sure that they get prioritized traffic. But if they're a direct competitor to a service that the ISP provides, then that still might be a problem. This is good that we got a lot of 822 back, but it still looks like some of those sneaky loopholes have managed to find their way into this revised bill of 822, which will still ultimately harm the basic tenets of net neutrality and what we want for fair and open playing fields, for fair competition between different products on the internet, different services on the internet, and how ISPs can influence their customers' behavior through these loopholes. So we get so close. From Kyle Netherwood, I didn't realize this can be controlled by individual states. Well, you see, we have this country where conservatives have been arguing for the power of states' rights. Again, they want that when it's things that benefit the conservative ideology, but they don't want that. Now they're saying that the FCC rules should preclude states' rights. That whatever the FCC says should run above the individual state practices. And again, do we agree with that or do we disagree with that? Do we feel that the state at the state level is the better source of localized government to protect the needs and the interests of that individual population? The needs of a person in Los Angeles are very different than the needs of someone in Boise, Idaho. So technically, we should still be supporting states' rights, but it's funny how conservatives have sort of flip-flopped on that while they have the presidency, the House, the Senate, and are now looking at stacking judges not only at the Supreme Court level, but also at the circuit court level. Now that we have an overwhelming conservative majority in all of those areas, well, wouldn't you know it, now states' rights are these pesky problems. So I've been very frustrated by that too. Again, now it's kind of up to New York. I'm hoping to see some progress on New York's bill. While the AG there, they've had some major problems with the local politics of the New York political scene and some really ugly individuals who need to be run out of town on a rail in terms of their personal lives and their personal issues, their personal demons. But we're going to have to see if New York can make any substantive progress on this in light of a mega machine of political influence that can throw speech around as money in ways that average citizens cannot. So that's a big problem. If we had real competition at that level, where if I could go and pay for fiber to home, or if I could pay for some other type of LTE connection outside of the towers of T-Mobile, AT&T, or Verizon, or some other competing network, like if we had wide area Wi-Fi instead of LTE, that would move the needle on our ability to negotiate with these corporations. Because the only thing that really matters is where do we put our money. But when you don't really have a choice on where to put your money, then they can largely do whatever they want. And as long as they can continue to accrue vast amounts of wealth, point that wealth at lawmakers, then we'll have less and less say in how politics is conducted. So my big hope, and Travis Walker actually just messaged this, New York is going to do it because East Coast is better than West Coast. Actually, what I'm really hoping is that New York is going to make this play to say, hey, we're not like California. This is the bill. We're going to do it for reals. I hope that there's that kind of showmanship, one-upsmanship. Washington State looks like it's also going to be an area that enacts stronger net neutrality provisions than California. And a couple other states have also flirted with what they can do for local at the state level. That's great. I feel at the state level, though, if we're really being politically active at the state level, what we need to get after is deregulating markets that create local monopolies or oligopolies or duopolies, where you get one DSL provider and one cable provider, and that's all you get for competition. It prevents fiber from entering the area. It prevents community initiatives. It prevents grants from DOE for funding municipal paid broadband infrastructure like Chattanooga. All of these things, if you're against those types of experiments, then I feel like you're really anti-American. The Chattanooga experiment with the DOE was a really big deal because it's not only can we get faster internet for better Netflixes, it's can we use that data infrastructure to form the new backbone of our energy grid. That's why DOE gave a grant to Chattanooga to roll out gigabit fiber. And that's why people in Chattanooga pay, I don't know, $70 a month for 1,000 megabytes down and 1,000 megabytes up under peak traffic. Yeah, I don't get that in California, and I pay a lot more. So, right now in the United States, and it's worth repeating, a coordinated cyber attack with maybe a few individual bad actors on the ground could knock out a series of maybe 6 to 10 transfer stations for power in the United States. And we could probably disrupt power to the majority of the East Coast and keep them without power for maybe weeks if that attack is coordinated properly. It is foolish to think that nations around the world are not devising strategies for enacting this type of attack. In fact, what we saw from the malware that was leaked out of North Korea is it likely had a weaponized component that could have enabled this type of cyber attack. Because what did it do? It got it was somehow manifested in the British NHS, and it shut down a significant part of the British NHS. So if that type of malware can be weaponized to disrupt major services like healthcare, then this is something we actually do need to be concerned about. If you are fighting these initiatives to get smarter infrastructure, better broadband, and why LTE to home is not sufficient, because then you can just disrupt one tower and shut down the communications grid for everyone connected to that tower. If you care about the infrastructure of this country and its ability to weather attacks from other countries, you need to be on board these initiatives to improve competition, improve access to rural communities, and make sure that our energy grid is as healthy as it can be. If you live in San Diego, you basically have one pipe of electricity that gets constantly disrupted during the summer months because of the power draw from the rest of California. If you had a smarter energy grid and you had more electric vehicles and you had more batteries in homes and you had more solar, you would be far better protected against any potential disruption to that system. So that's the game. If you want to keep voting against that, fine. But when this infrastructure crumbles, you only have yourself to blame. And that's the game. So, Don, I know you're trying to goad me into a debate, but right now, everything that you're talking about is nonviolent resistance. Riots surrounding conservatives at restaurants, diners, and hotels. There has not been anything violent happening, and that's what a peaceful resistance looks like, is someone has to face the consequences of their actions in the same way that conservatives like to march, conservatives like to hold protests. We saw tiki torches at Confederate installations and Confederate statues. That goes tit for tat. If the escalation of rhetoric is going to happen like that, it should happen in a peaceful and nonviolent way. Getting shouted at a diner is unfortunate, and it's a bad look. But that is not the same as a warfare on conservatives. Conservatives largely have themselves to blame for being the party in power and not really addressing the full needs of all of their constituency. That's the game. If you're upset by that and you think liberals are somehow to blame when we don't have the presidency, we don't have the House, we don't have the Senate, we don't have the judges, we don't have anything, then you are the weakest and feckless conservative party of all time. What do you own? Own it. What do you do? Own it. This is the game. If we're going to talk about politics, then that's politics. So, moving on. I did want to talk about this for just a second. This is University of York. I wanted to bring this up on Newegg because we talked about game developer hardware and some of the amazing news coming out about gaming being the most profitable industry of all time. So this is the University of York. No evidence to support link between violent video games and behavior. So this is actually a pretty interesting study in which they subjected participants to violent video games, some with more realistic depictions of violence, some with less. They studied reaction times from participants. They looked at realism. They talked about combat games. But one of the things that they do put a disclaimer on is, in the modern era, you can't really do these types of psychological tests on children. The potential for any type of damage to the psyche might be there. So it's extremely unethical to take kids who have very impressionable brain sponges and run them through the same types of tests. But once we start looking at people 18 years and older, there still does not seem to be any quantifiable link between aggressive behavior in video games and virtual environments and that enacting or replicating itself in real-world behavior. It doesn't seem to drive any specific trends towards behavior. It doesn't seem to drive, like doing word associations doesn't seem to prime anyone for more violent behavior. And unlike the Jack Thompsons of yesteryear, it doesn't seem to do any good job at preparing someone to commit an actual violent act from having done it in a digital representation of that act. So, again, this is one of those things we're going to have to keep having this debate. But one of the things that's a major problem with this debate is the fact that we can't talk about the effect of media created for adults in a scientific fashion and its impact on a child's mind. Again, like I said, we shouldn't. It's unethical to conduct this kind of research on kids, but this is why we need to get after parents. And I think the video game industry has provided appropriate information. I wish they would do more to talk about things like aftermarket purchases, loot crates, DLC, that kind of stuff. I feel that should have an impact on rating. If there's a gambling mechanic in your video game, I don't think a lawmaker should be able to say, you can't have gambling in a video game, but I think that video game needs to be licensed and regulated like we would see a slot machine being regulated in Vegas. If you're an adult, you should have the ability to make an informed purchasing decision. But that's a game that absolutely should not be in the hands of a child. Again, young, impressionable, and getting them to believe that the only way that games can be made is with paywall-style mechanics is inappropriate. So this is that last hurdle that I think we need to address as a society. Gaming is this huge industry. There was a joke. I can't remember who tweeted it, but someone actually posted yeah, apparently a major player of our first-person arena shooter are middle class, middle-aged white women. Someone else tweeted immediately. Oh, well, that's because these parents are buying their games for their kids, and someone immediately after them went whoosh. Oh, duh. We need to start having conversations with parents. You wouldn't take your kid to. You wouldn't encourage a young child to watch porn. You wouldn't encourage a young child to watch hyper-graphic depictions of horror or violence, rated R, rated NC-17 style media. If a game is made for adults, we need to have that conversation that this isn't probably something that younger people should be consuming. Even with these scientific studies saying, oh, we don't see any link between hyper-aggressive video games and violence in our society, we can only conduct these studies on people 18 years or older. It's still worth doing that because in those ages 18 to 24, your brain is still forming. So it's still encouraging to see that a teenager in early 20s, I've just, gotten my ID, I can drink beer, that there still doesn't seem to be any appreciable link between aggressive behavior and aggressive depictions of virtual violence. But I think we as a society can also make an informed or have an informed conversation about the fact that when something is for grown-ups, it's made for grown-ups, and that it shouldn't be made or it shouldn't be delivered to kids, right? So that's the gig. That's where the next part of this conversation needs to go. Because I don't know if you're like me, I get tired of people making these links, no scientific data to back it up. Well, I know that games have to contribute to a cycle of violence and abuse, because I have a strong feeling about it. Nothing has ever borne that out with any kind of scientific or replicatable scrutiny that this is a thing. And we're going to have to keep having these studies to keep combating the common knowledge talking points that people like to share about these types of things. It's like, we can't find any link to vaccines and autism. We still have to keep demonstrating that time and time and time and time and time again. We can't find any link to video games and violence. Oh, but I know there is. I saw my kid play a violent video game and then he got really rambunctious. That's not that's not scientific. That's not germane. That when we're talking about contributing to some of the ugliest aspects of our society, in fact, it's non-violent video games that most make me want to throw my controller in frustration when they're really hard. Damn you, Cuphead and Mugman, for your cartoonish depictions of animated coffee mug violence, making me want to throw my controller at my monitor. Grrr. Again, I really feel like we're living in one of the darkest timelines. I'm going to drink some coffee. From Kyle Netherwood, stupid that Pokemon had to be rated a 7 by PEGI because it had slot machines for in-game money, but games using real money for gambling get away with it. Okay, Kyle, because I love you like a brother. I feel our video game industry has to lead the way on a discussion about player behavior, about game mechanics that encourage certain styles of behavior. Pokemon is a very sensitive property to engage with slot machine style mechanics. I don't believe that gambling is only the randomized chance encounter which could potentially give you money. I think gambling should be defined as the dopamine hit you get when a randomized event works out in your favor, especially when you know that the odds of that randomized event are extremely low for playing out in your behavior. So loot boxes are a perfect example of this. You have a premium in-game currency, and let's say you didn't even spend any real-world money to buy that in-game currency, but it took a significant amount of grind. Like in Marvel Future Fight, like I still run Marvel Future Fight on autopilot. I'm not really playing that game anymore because of all of the bullshit random number generated mechanics that are now being employed to try and convince me to spend more money on the game. It takes me months to build up the specific materials for one of the characters that I'm trying to unlock. And then I take that material and I throw it into a random number generator, which now, thanks to Apple, making manufacturers disclose the events of their random number generating events will likely only pay out to the tune of 0.02% in my favor. Not 2% in my favor, 0.02% in my favor. So I had to grind in the game, playing aspects of the game that I don't like, to accrue this material. I throw it away, and when it does pay out in my favor, I don't get to unlock the character I want. I get a new material that goes towards completing that character. So then I might only get 17% of that character after months of effort, and I have to go back to grind and fulfill that again. That to me is a slot machine mechanic. That to me is gambling. And it doesn't matter that the value I get isn't transferable into another arena. It's to me, it's not different as for a kid or for an adult. I'm still grinding this game because I like the people in my alliance. There's an alliance combat mode, and I like the guys I play with. So we're all in the same boat, though, of being monstrously pissed off that these new game-breaking characters require hundreds of dollars to unlock in a mobile game, or literally years of grind to fully complete a powerful competitive version of that character. So that to me is really indistinguishable. If you're at a slot machine and a bunch of coins fall into the tray at the bottom, that's a dopamine hit. It's satisfying. It feels really good. If you win on a 0.02% slot machine mechanic in a video game and you're 9 and you get your favorite Marvel character, I finally unlocked Nova. I'm part of the Nova Corps. That's the same to me. That brain mechanic, and I really hope that we see more actual scientific study, because from my conversations with an addiction specialist, that just is a primer for people who already have issues with compulsive or obsessive behavior. That's not going to make a difference that they got money for one thing and they got Nova or Blue Marvel or Ant-Man. That's going to affect them in the same way, and I feel it needs to be regulated to the same degree. It's not the same as when we had collectible card games. You know, when I was really trading and playing Vampire the Masquerade, it was originally called Jihad. That was a terrible name for a card game. You know, I'd buy all these booster packs, and most of the booster packs had stuff that I didn't really need. But I could trade those cards. Those cards still had a value. It wasn't random. I mean, it's a random event. I'm opening a card pack and I might get something I want, I might not. And so that feels good when you get something that you want. But it's different than gambling, or it's different than this current aspect of video game manipulation, because I don't even think they still make Vampire the Masquerade as a card game, but I still have my stack of cards. And I can still play them, or I could sell them. And there are collectors on there who are paying a lot of money for some of these individual cards because the player base evaporated. Travis Walker Vampire the Masquerade isn't any better of a name. It's less inflammatory to a specific demographic of people, though, so I understand why they made the change. But you're not wrong. It's still a terrible name for a game. But again, this is also in that whole Magic the Gathering. That's not really a good name for a game. That sounds like, hey, let's go watch a kid's birthday party. Let's gather around and watch a 2-bit magician make balloon animals. But this is the aspect that I'm getting at. I don't believe it's germane. I don't think it matters if it's a mini game within a game. It's a primer for people to express video game behavior, which becomes a significant profit generating source. If it's FIFA and unlocking new characters, but they're behind these ridiculous random number generating paywalls, if it's loot boxes or loot crates in Star Wars Battlefront, if it's microtransactions that actually affect gameplay but have a randomized component to them, I don't have a problem with microtransactions, and I largely don't have a significant issue with microtransactions that affect gameplay. The biggest problem I have is, are we attaching the player progression in a video game in any way, mini game, main core game, side quests, to a randomized event? And then you are affixing time and value to something which the game developer has purposely designed to to prey on that dopamine release of whether or not you get the payout. And that to me is nearly indistinguishable from a brain chemistry perspective as gambling. That to me is essentially the same mechanic. You know your odds are low. And now we really know your odds are terrible for getting what you want. But man, it's going to feel so good if you get it. Let me take one more spin. Maybe this time I'll get it. You know, it's the odds are not in my favor, but eventually I might get a payout that I want. That's not how we should be looking at making games. All these amazing indie developers that just, pour their heart and soul into a game. It's like $30 on Steam, brand new. A Steam sale means it's going to be $5 6 months later. And they're fully complete games that don't get in your way, that don't halt player progression just to have random number generating events, and that they don't prey on that behavior from people who are susceptible to that kind of mechanic, forcing them to spend more money on the completion of the game. That's also why the game I'm actually playing a lot on my phone is a Diablo clone called Exiled Kingdoms with DOS-era graphics, because I'm a cranky old man. But I think it was $4 to unlock the whole game. They just recently put out another update with a bunch of huge quests. The most recent quest was crazy fun. I just leveled up to level 20, and my companion had an event where I had to go and storm an evil castle full of zombies and resurrect the god of the dead to get a broken crown that kills you slowly. So I had to run to another town to get rid of it. It was phenomenal. I paid $4 for that game, and it's still putting out new content. Exiled Kingdoms, that is a developer I am happy to support. Marvel Future Fight, a game franchise, a game built for all ages, all audiences, on a family-friendly franchise owned by Disney, got rid of their loot crates, but still, if you want to progress through the game quickly, you have to invest thousands of dollars if you were going to start playing today to catch up to some of the more competitive players in the game on a mobile game, because it's all random number generating. So, you don't have to spend a lot of money because you can just grind. Just grind it out, and eventually you'll be able to unlock a lot of these really powerful characters. You'll never be able to complete your roster, so if you're a completionist, you'll never win the game. But, it's fine. It's fine. You'll just put everything behind a random number generator that pays out at 0.02% for one piece of one character that you might need to fill out your roster. Yeah, that shouldn't be that should be how games are played. That should be the hallmark. That should be the structure, the aesthetic for how games work in the future. I'm sorry. I am getting really cranky here. So I want to get cranky about some other stuff, though. So who was it? Was it Renato? Was it Renato Laporte? Did you send it? Yeah. So one of the things that Renato sent me a message on Twitter when I tweeted out, what should we talk about for this week? And Aditya Anil wanted to talk about the Zone of Tech copyright strike by Apple. There's a YouTube channel, Zone of Tech. They put out a video years ago that was just recently got a copyright strike, and now they're potentially looking at litigation. We haven't gotten an update from them on that. And then Renato Laporte sent me a series of tweets kind of falling into some of the same conversation. With YouTube striking the LTT channel over the Fridays We Are Live on Twitch videos, do we fear that YouTube will start chasing down creators who make publicity of their content on other platforms designed to compete with YouTube, and even on monetization platforms? Since YouTube started again with a system more or less like Patreon, they could also start flagging videos where the creator promotes his or her Patreon. I have so many mixed feelings about this. It's an old AF video, and striking the whole channel after such a long time feels like an over-the-top measure, but providing tutorials on how to get your hands on a non-public version of the system falls under piracy in Apple's terms of use. But 3 strikes within X time period means closing of the channel. Let's say a channel did a bunch of those videos since Leopard. The person was never notified by Apple or YouTube, and then boom, a couple of strikes for videos that are years old, and bye-bye channel. So Renato does a pretty good job of summing up what happened here with Zone of Tech. So this is a young man who actually, by all rights, looking through his channel, is a pretty big fan of Apple and is trying to encourage people in how to get the most out of their Apple purchases. I'm going to go ahead and screen share part of this, and I'll probably get a copyright strike for talking about a copyright strike about his video with a copyright strike. So this is currently sitting at around 194,000 views, and this is a very emotional video. If you're into YouTubers and content creation and content production, if you care at all about the individuals who make the videos that people watch online, then this is some pretty scary stuff. So he goes through and he describes a situation where he made this video talking about how to enable a developer preview of an operating system, but this kind of flew under the radar and was recently claimed by a third-party business that enforces copyright issues for corporations like Apple. He disputed the content strike, and YouTube went into this sort of arbitration where it's sort of a black box. You send them a message, they do some kind of investigation on their own, and then they come back and say, you're wrong. That's essentially how this plays out. Ideally, there would be some way to democratize this, but YouTube is a private platform, and they don't really have to share anything with you about how their process works, or we'd get good after-action reports on things like why videos were demonetized. We don't get any information on that. It's just, you did bad, and you should feel bad, and change what you're doing. We're not going to tell you what to change, but just change it. And then we'll reassess and we'll reevaluate again. And that's a terrible way to work directly with your content creators. So this gentleman also reaches out to the company that initiated the takedown, the strike against his channel, and he felt he was operating in a good faith measure, utilizing Apple products and Apple copyrighted systems in his videos. But I think he was overly hung up on whether or not he used any Apple video. So he talks about like, well, maybe I used part of an Apple keynote or part of an Apple video or part of an Apple commercial in my video, and that's what initiated the strike. But I only did it to show what I was talking about, so that's fair use. Here's the problem. Fair use is not a proactive defense against being litigated against. Fair use is the argument you can make when you're in court to defend your piece of media. That's what fair use is. Technically, any corporation, so we're talking about Apple. So let's make this dangerous. I am holding up an iPhone SE. That logo right there is copyrighted trademarked material by Apple Corporation. By my showing it on camera without the expressed permission of Apple, a lawyer at Apple could make an argument that I am violating their copyright. That would be a silly argument to make. It would draw the ire of most of the tech community if they were to come after me in any specific fashion just by showing one of their products on camera. But Apple does have a right to defend their trademark, to defend their copyrighted material, and especially as it might pertain to their terms of service that you agree to in an end-user licensing agreement. That's it. That's literally all it could take. So then I would have to make a defense of why I showed an Apple product on camera as it pertains to something instructive or transformative, providing some type of commentary or using it in some type of parody. And I might be able to make an appeal directly to Apple, but Apple's lawyers don't have any pressure to comply with my response. They don't have to act. They don't have to remove this copyright strike if they don't feel like they should have to. The only other recourse then is to go into some type of litigation where I defend myself in a court of law against Apple's lawyers. This is a major issue that we face with the copyright system in this country being as broken as it is. Any channel talking about movies, any channel talking about music, any channel talking about technology. Your favorite tech YouTuber shows part of a proprietary piece of software. That software developer could come after them. The phone manufacturer could come after them. It's you don't get to say, well, I'm doing this under fair use. You can't come after me. That's not how this works. You say, I'm doing this under fair use, and that's where I'm going to hire a lawyer to make that argument for me in court on my dime against a mega corporation who has an army of lawyers that can outspend me 1 billion to 1 to make a case and set precedent for this. If you want a better example of how this process goes down and a victory for a content creator who was at H3, they had a really knockdown, drag-out fight with another YouTube producer over reaction videos. And they were able to win a pretty significant victory against a sort of a troll who was making a claim that they were abusing his likeness in their videos, and that violated copyright. So it took someone abusing the copyright process for a content creator to eke out a small but significant win for defending fair use. On the whole, the majority of us who produce this kind of content, like if Samsung comes after me because I show off one of their products and I say I don't like their software and that this phone was good, but it's probably not the phone for me, and they feel that that's been something that besmirches their trademark, or abuses their trademark, or violates their copyright, my only recourse is I'm going to have to pull that video. I'm not going to be able to fight Samsung. Again, this is totally hypothetical. This isn't anything that's happened between me and Samsung. I don't think I exist on Samsung's radar anyway, so I don't think they're worried about me. But this is one of those problems. YouTube can't police any of this, and they have no incentive to police any of this because they're an advertising company. So they want to be cool with the brands who might buy ads on YouTube. So they're almost always going to side with the corporation in any dispute where they have a say in what happens. And that's why the dispute process is so largely built on you go talk to the company that gave the strike. We're not going to be an advocate for you or against you. We're going to be neutral. We're just a platform that shares videos, and your video got flagged, and it's our duty to notify you, but that the rest of this is on you. So you go and handle this. If you can handle it to their satisfaction, awesome. If you can't, then we'll probably have to shut your channel down. And that's it. That's all you get from YouTube. Outside of that, it's you versus mega corporations with tons of money. So Zone of Tech, he also mentions another channel, a gentleman by the name of Max, who also, again, kind of digs into these products. He's on his own. That sucks. And it really sucks because this isn't democratically leveraged. It's not consistently leveraged. Excuse me. His video got caught by this company. Scores of other videos are going to fly under that company's radar. When I was producing movie reviews, we stayed off of YouTube largely because the automatic content ID system would flag all of our videos, alert the copyright holder to any of the movies that we featured in our videos, and would instantly revoke monetization on our channel. So we went to Blip, we went to Mevio, we went to any other service that we could to try and produce our movie reviews because we were making a good faith effort to stay within the tenets of net neutrality, of the tenets of fair use, commentary and critique. We used precious little footage of any film or trailer, but more owing to something specific that we were referencing in our movie review. And the few times that we did reach out to individual distributors, like we tried to talk about With Nail and I in Movies You May Have Missed, we put together a whole review of With Nail and I, sent out the list of clips that we were hoping to utilize, tried to get those clips cleared, and then we got a form letter from their lawyers saying, now that we know of your existence, any property or any video that you produce which utilizes content from any of the films in our distribution catalog, we will come after you with a team of lawyers to shut you down and sue you into oblivion. They worded it a little nicer than that. But basically, it was a game they played with us in bad faith to determine what it was that we were trying to do, and then to make sure that they had some kind of leverage on us in legalese, notifying us that any potential action that we took would be met with legal force against our production. So just because, a company seems to be cool with an individual producing videos about their products doesn't mean they're going to be cool with everybody. Just because a manufacturer or a copyright system doesn't go after someone who's making tutorials on how to circumvent developer previews doesn't mean that they're going to be cool with you doing it. And the screw of that is, let's say you get really popular for making videos that show how to get around that, then you're a bigger target for potential legal action, not only for copyright, but then also for Apple's licensing agreements, their terms of service. So I feel for this guy a lot, because it doesn't sound like he really understood how commentary and critique work. It doesn't really sound like he understands fair use, and he was operating in what he thought was a good faith way to talk about products he liked, to talk about services he liked. And unfortunately, it sounds like he's going to get a pretty expensive education in how the real world actually handles this, and has been handling this kind of stuff since these copyright laws were enacted. It's frustrating, because if you want to make something like the Joel McHale show. So we worked with Donaldson Califf when we were producing the movie review show. And these were lawyers who literally wrote the book and wrote a book on copyright and fair use for documentary filmmakers. If you are backed by a major studio like The Soup, Talk Soup used to be, and Joel McHale is now producing for Netflix, he doesn't need to clear any of the clips from the reality shows that he's making fun of. He cuts a clip out of the show, puts it up on camera, and makes a joke at the show's expense. Doesn't necessarily do anything particularly transformative. And I would say his commentary is pretty thin from any kind of educational standpoint, but it's entertaining. There are elements of parody, but he was backed by E!, a major studio, a major television channel, and now he's backed by Netflix. So a lawyer who's representing the Real Housewives isn't going to want to go after Netflix and Joel McHale. If I do the exact same thing, green screen, make the same lame joke about the Real Housewives of Boise, Idaho, and cut up the same clips in the same way and make an even better joke, or do something actually transformative in a situation of parody, that lawyer for the Real Housewives of Boise, Idaho is going to look at me like, the second addition to his home. That lawyer is going to look at me and go, well, that's an easy target. He doesn't have Netflix money. I can totally go after that guy. And he can serve me with some sort of copyright violation. I'd have to dispute it with YouTube. It's going to land me in some type of arbitration or some type of courtroom scenario where I'd have to defend myself in court, and I don't have the money to do that. So that's why I don't produce movie review shows anymore. It's just not fun. And I like getting paid for my work. But to the same token, I'm probably vulnerable in a number of ways just for having shown consumer electronics on camera. Is it likely that someone's going to come after my channel? Probably not. But it's still possible. It's still entirely possible that a lawyer at a tech company might say, you know what? I don't really like how this guy's showing off our phone or showing off our app or talking about our products. That's probably damaging to our trademark if he doesn't say something nice about our products. So, we should probably contact YouTube and tell YouTube that this guy is abusing our trademark. And that's it. That's death to that video, and that's where we're at. So to Renato's point, from Fat Produce, book review shows are probably safer copyright-wise. Although we do show the cover art in the thumbnail of our book reviews, we should probably come up with a neutral, completely redesigned template. I mean, also our thumbnails aren't necessarily great for the Geek Book Club, but you're right. Unless we were reading entire passages of the book, our book review show is a lot safer. Is a lot safer than a movie review or TV review show that shows clips of the content that they're talking about. So to Renato's point, what we're seeing is another step from YouTube YouTube is going to be employing a membership system, a membership system that's not entirely unlike Patreon, where for $5 a month you can set up a tier where members can get access to special pieces of content, special videos. You can kind of paywall your own stuff. I'm not sure I'll join it. So first of all, I can't, because it's only available if you've reached 100,000 subscribers, and I just broke 68 literally 2 days ago. Crossed over to 68,001 subscribers. Proud of me. Doesn't mean anything for how well my videos do, how many times they're viewed, if I make any more money off of that subscriber base. But it's a neat number to point to that I'm still building a subscriber base. But it sounds like YouTube is going to be getting significantly more aggressive about partner status. And I think they're doing this in response to services like Twitch. Twitch and Amazon are very aggressive about their partner program. And if you're a Twitch partner, then it's extremely frowned upon to do things like co-stream. Like if you want to stream to Twitch and to YouTube Gaming live at the same time, that's a big no-no for Twitch's terms of service. That has always sort of vaguely been built into YouTube's rules, but now it sounds like they're starting to enforce it, which sucks because, again, they haven't been consistent in enforcing this type of behavior in the past. They're not being consistent in enforcing who's going to get hit with this type of punitive action. But moving into this membership system, there is language in the membership program which is probably going to point towards, if you're a YouTube member, if you're a YouTube channel that uses this membership program and you talk about your Patreon, that's going to be a big no-no. So I've been building a community on Patreon. I will likely continue to reinforce that that's the primary way of contributing directly to production on this channel. If the language of the YouTube membership program prevents me from also keeping the Patreon as an adjunct to my YouTube earnings, then I will not be engaging with the YouTube membership program. But it's kind of a moot point because I still have 32,000 subscribers to go. I need a 50% bump in subscribers before I even have the ability to activate that on my channel. But Aditya Anil, Renato Laporte, thank you for bringing those points up when I tweeted out about what to talk about this week, because it's a lot of YouTube drama and it's a lot of crankiness. I don't know that viewers, that consumers, people who appreciate and subscribe to this content always have the best handle on the hoops and the hurdles, the hoops we have to jump through and the hurdles we have to jump over to make content online for you to consume. I really wish it were as simple as I just made some cool stuff and you got to watch it. There's a ton of back end that I need to fulfill with every video that I produce. And, things like Patreon complicate that, but it's also worth it for me to invest time into a sector like that. The Patreon, we just broke 200 subscribers on Patreon. And in terms of numbers, I don't want to get too specific because that's actually against YouTube's terms of service too, so I'm not going to screen share this. But I produced a video comparing the Lumia 1020 against the Huawei Mate 10 Pro. Actually, let me pull it up so I can at least get my dates right. But someone was mentioning, well, it's a shame that I'm not doing the rest of my camera reviews public because that one video you did with the Lumia 1020 went viral and got you 600,000 views. Well, here's what 600,000 views gets you. I'm pulling it up right now. YouTube search is super slow. Okay, so Nokia Lumia 1020 in 2018. Can this Zeiss phone camera still compete? I published that video January 15th of 2018. It is July 16th of 2018. So 6 months later. This video has been live for 6 months. It has currently garnered 672,000 views. And let me pull up the lifetime stats so that we can talk about, let's say, this year. It has an average view duration of almost 3 minutes, 1.7 million minutes of watch time, and it will make me, over 6 months, 670,000 views, almost 2 million minutes of watch time, and a pretty solid average view duration for one of my videos. Like, it's a pretty big deal when I hit that 3-minute mark. Any YouTube video that's going over 3 minutes is kind of a big deal. That video, over 6 months of playtime, of watch time, and 670,000 views, will make me less money than 1 month on Patreon with 200 Patreon subscribers. There really isn't any significant benefit for me trying to be popular on YouTube and trying to make videos that go viral and trying to join conversations that give me all of these amazing imaginary internet points. I need to pay rent. I need to put a roof over my family's head. I need to buy food. I need to pay for my daughter being in a nice preschool. I mean, that's not going to cut it if 670,000 views over 6 months, over 6 months of activity on this one video are going to do less for me than 1 month on Patreon, with people contributing directly to this experiment and people contributing directly to supporting production on the channels that they like to watch. That kind of interactivity, that kind of audience building, that kind of community building is going to mean a lot more to me. This is people that actually want to invest in contributing to this process. It doesn't play. It doesn't wash. With all of the videos that I've produced, I mean, how many videos have I made? So, sorry, I've got to pull up this video manager and it takes a long time. Holy cow. Oh my God. This live stream is going to be my 1,000th video. Oh, I did not plan this very well. Oh no, my 1,000th video is the crankiest, angriest thing I've ever made. The smartphone camera manual settings guide was video 999. Oh, I make poor life decisions. Oh no. Okay. Another thing for one to get cranky about, I need to take a sip of coffee. Oh, that hurts so bad. Okay, I have a backlog, I have a catalog of 1,000 videos. Over the lifetime of all of these videos, the search engine optimization for all of these videos, people finding my videos, I will make about the same amount of money on 1,000 videos with 68,000 subscribers over a month as I will with 200 subscribers on Patreon. YouTube has not maintained its status as a platform for helping people build a community on that platform which can succeed. It doesn't work out. The economics don't work. This is not to say you should be discouraged and that you shouldn't create content. What I'm saying is now is the perfect time to diversify your content and reach the audiences that are specific to those platforms. And then if you're looking to monetize that traffic, it's in building a community of people that you can leverage in negotiations for sponsorship deals, brand deals, advertising deals, or in direct crowdfunding initiatives. Oh, these people. So from Jason Gill, just delete the stream. I don't want. It's like my podcasts have actually started building a little. Last week's podcast got 1,600 views just on YouTube alone. Not that I stream anywhere else. You're only watching this stream on the platform that you're currently watching it on, right? Kyle Netherwood, Fat Produce, thank you very much. Travis Walker, it's perfect. Cranky is your thing. This is like breaking new tiers. Like I've reached Super Saiyan crankiness, at this point. From Fat Produce, just count your first video as a pilot episode, which is what we did for the Geek Book Club. I need to say, because again, there's going to be an ad on the audio version of this podcast talking about the Geek Book Club, but we just hit our 1-year anniversary on the Geek Book Club. We've been producing that show for a year. That was a very important milestone for Andrew and I to hit in our last broadcast. From Kyle Netherwood, Juan says he loves me in his 1000th video. I love you like a brother, Kyle. I've always loved the discussions we get into. Renato Laporte, just delete a video you don't like. Actually, you know what? Just to protect myself, I probably have some old Windows 8 video tutorials that, Microsoft might come after me for copyright. So I should delete those, and I'll have a healthy buffer again so I can do something special for video 1000. From Aditya Anil, the potato review is still the finest jab at unscripted unboxings. Thanks, man. From Richard Ratner. Hey, Richard, how's it going, man? Congratulations, Juan. YouTube might not love you, but we do. Renato Laporte, until we get to Black Mirror situation, those YouTube numbers are kind of pointless. Even worse, when YT is not helping you reach your own subscribers when you put a new video online. Another major problem with this platform in the way that I have to guard against them demonetizing my videos. So I have to upload a video and wait to see if it's going to be demonetized. But then when I publish from that waiting period, it seems to break any kind of notifications. So either I put a video out and hope that it gets ads served on that video, or I wait, know that it's going to serve ads, but then reach none of my subscribers. So I'm damned if I do, and I'm damned if I don't. But if YouTube's going to play this game, I want all of my videos, which should be monetized, to be monetized. That's the game. Cranky. Folks, we've reached that 2-hour point. I think it's time to wrap this up. I want to thank everybody for submitting comments and asking questions and joining the live chat. And I know that this one was a bit of a bear to get through. Especially, I know anytime that we talk politics, it gets a little rough. But again, for the majority of you who have been contributing to this political discussion, I feel have been doing so in a way that we're all agreed that there are problems, but we might disagree on the solutions to those problems. And I feel like that's where we'll make the best coalition of geeks and nerds to address the future ills our society faces, as the rest of the mainstream media just sort of ignores that these terrible things are happening to the most important communications platform the world has ever seen. So I appreciate that so many of you will at least go with me on these rambling conversations where I'm sitting here and whinging on about things that I think are upsetting. So I appreciate the consistent support, and not only the support, but the effort to join a conversation where I might actually disagree with your position, but that we are in agreement that we're not trying to ruin the country. Like, I don't feel any of you are attacking me, and I am trying very hard to make that sentiment, even while I viscerally disagree with some people, that I'm not trying to destroy you. Like, I don't believe that that's a thing. YouTube videos, watch this lib cucktard get destroyed, has never happened. Like, none of those videos have ever played out the way their titles should say they will. And I'm getting a lot of comments here. James Vincent, cranky. That should be on the mugs. I need to design a cranky mug after I pull off. The next mug I want to do is a But I Digress, because I definitely go off on tangents a lot. And then after that, I think I can address a cranky mug. But yeah. So that's a game. Again, that housekeeping, I'm going to have a couple more videos coming out this week. I'm hoping to do a couple shorter form mini reviews on some audio gear and maybe a comparison video. I've been teasing these for a little while, and I just need to finish them. But some mega super long videos took up all that time. The BlackBerry Key 2 camera review took me a long time. It's a 19-minute video. Talking about those cameras on the BlackBerry Key 2. And I felt it was worth joining that conversation with some nuance. I'm so tired of people saying, oh, it's garbage, and then not really expressing in what ways is it deficient, but we all know it's garbage, and someone else said it's garbage, so I'm going to say it's garbage too. And that's not fair. We should evaluate and assess that just like any other product that we would get our hands on. But I do want to plug the manual camera settings guide. Yeah. I'm going to screen share this one again. I spent the whole first minute of this podcast with this up on the screen. Absolutely appreciate those of you helping to share this video out there. This is one of those that I think is going to be a long tail video. I don't think this is ever going to be a huge performer in any one given moment. It's more, I want this to be a guide or a resource that people can find when they want to improve the shots they get from their phone. And so I'm really excited that this is finally done. It's finally public, and that people can check it out, can share it. If you have someone in your circle of family and friends who you think might benefit from this kind of information, greatly appreciate you passing it along. And then also, for continued support on the Some Gadget Guy platform, the Support Some Gadget Guy link is now live on... whoops. Yeah, I just clicked on it again. Is now live on SomeGadgetGuy.com. Right at the top banner, support Some Gadget Guy. There are links to where you can, check out my Patreon. You can buy my photography book, or then other things that you might already be doing, or benefits that you might get from companies like Amazon, Humble Bundle for gaming, OnePlus, Audible. And when I'm finished with my proofs for the Megapixel mug, that's where those mugs will be purchasable. You will be able to see them, and I will probably be drinking all of my on-camera coffee from these mugs. I'm hoping these proofs come out. I'm so nervous. I spent $16 whole to proof these mugs, so I hope they come out well. It's a design that was crowdsourced through people on the Patreon. I put up the initial designs that I wanted to go with on the Patreon. I got some amazing feedback from individuals on my Patreon page, and that helped influence round 2. Did a couple minor tweaks from that and sent them off to go and get them proofed. So hopefully they come out well, because this has been a pun I've been using for a while, and it deserves to be on a coffee mug. So folks, all kinds of ways you can help support production on this channel. All kinds of ways that you can join the conversation and become a resource for your family and friends who might not be as into technology, but who are going to be affected by the political realities of being a tech consumer in the 21st century. And I thank you all so much for everything that you do in keeping the conversation going and for supporting production. And I can't do this without you. We're all in this together, so you can't do it without me. But again, it's important that we're a team, even if we're divided on individual elements of this discussion, that we can all work together to make something better for the people that come after us. So folks, thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for subscribing. Thanks so much for sharing, for posting my videos on social platforms. Whenever I see a public review of mine end up on Reddit, that's a huge boon for my traffic numbers, and that helps out a lot. And then for those of you that are engaged and working directly on platforms like Patreon, you have been phenomenal in helping me make the best possible quality product that I can. I will be back next week on another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat, the SGGQA podcast. So you know where you can find me Monday mornings. And then throughout the rest of the week, you can catch me on the social platforms at SomeGadgetGuy, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, where we can expand on some of these conversations, expand on some of these topics, and really get into that tech content. Again, thanks so much, and have yourself a phenomenal tech week. I will catch you next week on the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show. Be well.